All right, right on, folks. This is the Albrecht chuck video. All right, right on, folks. The Albrecht chuck, the pride and joy of Stuttgart, Germany. Patent date November 21st, 1933. Joseph Albrecht and his team developed what is quite arguably one of the greatest drill chucks ever made. Now, go into any machine shop around the world and you're going to find the Albrecht chuck. Now, why are you going to find it in any machine shop? Because of its precision quality and its ease of use. You can tighten this chuck with your hand. You don't need a key. Now, is this the first keyless chuck? Not by a long shot. If you look at old brace bits, these all had some form of keyless chuck on these where you tighten this with your hand. Look at this old guy here. And if you look at Miller's Falls tools, they have patents that go way back. Here's one, 1896 for a keyless chuck. Here's another one for Miller's Falls, 1877 for a keyless chuck. So this technology was well on its way, but a king emerged, the Albrecht chuck, 1933. This thing is precision quality, and if you're a machine shop, you're going to want to have one of these chucks. All right, now why all this talk about Albrecht chucks? Well, one, I love old tools, and I love the history of old tools, and you probably do as well if you're watching this video. Secondly, I got a problem with this Albrecht chuck. Now, this is a 1/32 to 1/2 inch chuck. And lately, I've been trying to chuck up on something that's a 1/2 inch, and this won't open up wide enough to accept a 1/2 inch anymore. So it is time to investigate, figure out what's going on. I'm going to take this all apart. I'm going to show you how to lube it up, do some maintenance. All right, let's come in for a closer look. All right, here is this Albrecht chuck, and you can see here 1/32 to 1/2 inch. Also says 1 millimeter to 13 millimeter. Now, some things have changed since I first started this video. So this deal with opening this up, and I couldn't get a 1/2 inch deal to fit in there, I've actually solved that problem now. So when I first started filming this video, I was going to show real easily how you can use these tapered wedges to pop the arbor off, and I ran into some problems. And the arbor, this is the old arbor, this was really stuck in there. So I turned that into a whole video of how I created a puller to get this off of the chuck. You can go back and watch that video. That was great. That worked out really good. But since then, I ordered a new arbor, and there was a difference between these two arbors. Now, this one was longer. This is a Jacob's Taper 6, and so is this. But for some reason, this one went down further into the chuck, and it was preventing these jaws from opening up. But now you can see this easily accepts a 1/2 inch shaft into this, and we'll get into the how and why of what was going on in there when we take this all apart. Now, first things first, to take this apart, you do use these Jacob's wedges here. These are number 6. All right, now how these Jacob's tapered wedges work is you can see one side here is tapered on each of these, and you want these to oppose each other, so when they push out, they're pushing flat, they're staying parallel on either side here. So when we insert this onto the chuck, right, this is going to push up and push this arbor off. Now, earlier, when I had the old arbor on there, this was too tight, and I could only get the tips together. Now it's too loose, so what I had to do here is I had to make a little shim, so I made a brass shim, and now we can slide these two together just like that. See, now we can squeeze. This is a nice parallel push of the chuck off of the arbor, so let's give this a little push. Right, and no big deal. This just pops right off. All right, next up for maintenance-wise, for taking this whole thing apart, we want to remove this collar right here. Now, here's a quick look. I'll post a picture of this on the screen. You can pause the screen and look at the parts here. but we got the collar, the shell, the body, the balls, the drive pin, the spindle, jaw guide, hood, and the jaws. So there is all the parts here of this Albrecht chuck. So first step, we want to remove this collar. There's a little screw, and you need a small screwdriver here. So we pull this screw out, and you can see close here, there's a gap right here. Now to spread this gap and pull this off of the chuck, you need a little wedge. So I made a little wedge here out of aluminum as to not mar the chuck here. These darn chucks are pretty darn expensive, $500–600 for a chuck like this. So you want to be really careful when you're working on these chucks. All right, so you put this little wedge in here, and I'm just going to give this a tap. And there we go. See how that spread that collar? And now we can slip this right off. All right, next up, we want to remove the hood here from the shell. If we look at our chart here, here's the hood, and here's our shell, and you can see that this is threaded onto there. It's hard to see that breaking line there because it's machined so nicely. There are also some instructions from the Albrecht website how to take this apart. It does tell you here that it's a right-hand thread. I'll put this on the screen as well. You can pause that if you do want to look at those instructions. But to get this off, I made a little block here. Now, I got this tip from Tom Lipton, Ox Tools. He did a nice video on the Albrecht chucks. So I open this up on the Bridgeport there, machine this out. This comes out to about 1 inch, 475, 480 thousandths. And that fits this chuck. So you can see right here that the shell slides in there. All right, let's take our assembly now. We got our chuck in the brass block. Insert this into the vise. Crank down on this. Get this nice and tight. And if you've been watching my videos, you know I repaired this strap wrench recently in preparation for this Albrecht chuck video here. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. There we go. And there, that hood will spin right off. Look at all the gunk, right? You can see why this needs maintenance. Look at all that junk. All right, let's take a closer look at this. Look at all the nonsense on here. This is like going in to your teenage son's room and you're finding the old banana peels and the bad socks under the bed. Look at this. This is definitely in need of a cleaning for sure. Ugh. All right, let's start with the disassembly. I got a little plastic tool here, so I'm going to push these jaws out. Look at these nasty things. And these jaws are not in any particular order, so there is this jaw, and what I'm doing is I'm dropping these into some WD-40 and I'm going to scrub these up. All right, so that was the first jaw. Here is the second one right there. We'll pull that out. All right, if we look now, we have the jaw guide, and this is the drive pin, and that's an interlocking connection between the jaw guide and the shell. Now that just lifts off. So if we slide this up, right, up and out, ugh, look how gross this is. All right, now remove this spindle. Now this is a left-hand thread, so I'll spin this to the right. And there is our spindle, and you can see the threads on that. It's almost like an Acme thread. And you can see right here how our jaw interlocks with that spindle. So when you spin this, this moves the jaws up and down. So all three of these are the same. All right, so now what we want to do, this is the body here, this is the shell, this is the body. See, we push this up and down. We want to push this up and out, but we want to be careful because this is trapping our ball bearings in there. So we want to be very careful how we pull this out because we don't want our ball bearings just to shoot all over the place here. Okay, so just push that out. I want to be nice and careful. That is a very tight fit. And there you can see the ball bearings down below, all in their grossness. Looks like they're in a sewer. I'm so glad I'm cleaning this out. Okay, so right over top of our tub of WD-40, I'm going to go in with this little plastic tool, and I'm just going to push these ball bearings out and right down into the WD-40. The horror. The horror. All right, here's all the parts, nice washed and cleaned in WD-40 with a soft bristle brush. Very important thing, you do not want to clean any of these parts with a wire wheel, wire brush, anything abrasive that's going to remove material. I have cleaned all these parts with some soft Scotch-Brite just to remove anything stuck to it, that type of deal. And now we can visually inspect these parts inside and out. Look at the wear surfaces. Now, when we're looking at the wear surfaces, what we're looking for is anything that might be sticking up, right? Stalactites, stalagmites. Stalactite sticks tight to the ceiling. Stalagmite, you might trip over it, right? Remember that? So we're looking for anything that might be sticking up. Like you see this? Now, if we take a closer look here at this jaw guide and we look close right here, we can see a little burr raised where the jaw slides in and out. Maybe the jaw is pushing left and right here on the sides of this jaw guide. So here is a little burr that we want to take down. Now, how do we take that kind of thing down? Well, I have some hard Arkansas stones. These are some white opaque Arkansas stones. You could also use an India stone to do the same thing. I do like these hard Arkansas stones. And what we want to do is just lightly go over these surfaces like this. We don't want to remove material from anywhere else. We just want to remove that high spot, that burr. All right, so we'll take our rectangular Arkansas stone, put it right into that 90 degree, and we just want to lightly rub this. This is a wear surface. We're only trying to clean up anything that's sticking up high. So just light and quick. You don't want to hang out there too long. Same thing, clean the other side. We'll go around the whole chuck here. All right, now to go after these burrs right here. These are a little bit more significant, so I'm going to switch to this India stone here. This is a medium India stone. And we're going to hold this down on the bench, and you're trying your best, just to hit that little raised surface right there. Not trying to hit any of the surrounding area, just trying to hit that little raised burr. Feel it with the finger. You don't want to take too much. And we'll hit the burr here on the other side. And then again, when I come into the inside now, because we've probably rolled that burr into the inside, and now we want to hit this surface again. And make sure that we take down this burr on the inside. All right, now if we inspect again and we look, we have nice, crisp corners here, no burrs sticking up. That looks great. All right, and then inside this jaw guide, right into this section here, we just want to find a stone that fits and just lightly go over this surface here on the bottom, and then also up the sides here, just very lightly. And now we'll go over the three jaws. You can see how the jaw inserts here and it rides on this surface. So we're looking at those wear surfaces right under here. So same thing, we take our stone here, just lightly go over, this is good to put down on the bench here. Go over this very lightly. I can't express how light I'm going over this and how hard these Arkansas stones are. And then we can also inspect the inside of the jaw. This is what grips up on our bit. Usually there's some little things sticking up on that. So same thing, just lightly going over the surface. You can hold this, match that angle, clean up that edge, clean up this edge. This is a good part to replace. These do get worn down and you can see a little wear on the tip of the jaw here, but we just want to make sure nothing is sticking out. This is going to grip very nicely on a drill bit or whatever you're putting in there. This little groove in the jaw, you could use a stone like this just to get up into that corner. And here's where the jaw fits in to our spindle. So this groove right here, again, you know, just very lightly, just running it real quick over all of these surfaces. Okay, now we're looking at the body and the shell, and the body slides into the shell here, and this is where the ball bearings get trapped between these two surfaces. So if we look closely, we can see this line right here where the ball bearings run, and it's made this line. So we can just take a stone like this and just very lightly go around the edge of this. Just make sure there's nothing sticking up around this edge. That's all I want to do. You don't want to get aggressive with this. You want to be very light. All right, for the other mating surface here on the shell, you can see the line right there where the ball bearings have been running. And we have another little piece of the Arkansas stone here, and we're just gonna rub this very lightly on that surface. Maybe once around, maybe twice around, but that's it. Then we take a closer look, just make sure everything looks good. Take a little swab. Right, you can see a little bit of that. Maybe some little things were sticking up. You're getting that surface just a little bit smoother. Those ball bearings also touch a little bit on the sidewall. All right, now we take a look at the hood. And if we look inside here, we can see this might possibly be a little bit of surface rust. I do cut a lot of acrylic in the shop, milling, machining pieces of acrylic. So occasionally I'm using water, soapy water, that type of thing on the cutting tools for cutting that acrylic. So this could very well be some spotting on here from some water that got up in the chuck, that type of thing. But this surface right here, this clamps down over top of this, and this is the mating surface here. So actually, this surface in here wants to be slightly grippy. So when you lock down the chuck, it's gonna stay locked and closed. So what I got here is some 400 grit sandpaper. I'm just gonna reach in here and then just lightly go over that surface. I'll just spin it. Seems like the nicest way to do it is just from right here with your finger. And we're not trying to remove any material. We're just trying to put some light scratches in the surface. I know it probably removes a tiny, tiny bit, but we're not trying to remove any material. That's a good thought to have in your head when you're doing this. All right, that surface looks pretty good to me now. There's a little bit of staining, but I'm not concerned about that. I feel like anything that might have been sticking up is now flat, and there is a nice texture on the surface now for the mating surface with the jaws. All right, now I'm gonna clean these all down again in some WD-40 and get off any kind of abrasive dust that might be on these surfaces. All right, it's time for reassembly, and what I have here is some white lithium grease. Now, on the Albrecht website, they don't say anything about putting lubrication in here. I'm just putting a very, very thin coat of this white lithium grease on. You don't want a lot of this at all, just a tiny bit. I'm gonna put some down here where the ball bearings sit. Just gonna paint this on very lightly, and then I'm gonna come back in with my finger and just give everything a nice wipe down. See that in there? That's too much. I'm just gonna scoop that out. You know, just with your finger. You hardly even want to see it on the surface. Just smearing this around with my fingers. Just putting a very light coating on everything. So now what we got is I made this little deal on the lathe here, and this slides right up inside the shell. And so I made this so I can just pour the ball bearings in. They'll roll right into place rather than having to place these with a set of tweezers or that type of thing. All right, so I got the ball bearings. There are 25 of them here for this particular chuck, and I'm just gonna drop these right in. All right, now I'm just gonna roll these around till they all drop into place. So with 25 of them, it leaves a tiny gap over here. They're not completely tight when they're all down. All right, so I put a little tiny bit extra lithium grease here on the body where it's gonna touch the ball bearings. And now what we do is we center this right over top of this and then lift up. And we're kind of pushing the bottom out. Just like that. That's nice. And now we've trapped those ball bearings inside. We can set this into our little brass holder now. Okay, now just a little bit of this lithium grease on our spindle. That's probably even too much. I'm just going to wipe a little bit off. That looks good. And this is a left-hand thread, so we're going to screw this into the left. Giving a light brush of lithium here on these 3 slots for the jaws. Now I'll take the jaw guide and I'll drop this on, making sure to line up this pin. Okay, now I'm just going to rotate the spindle inside so it lines up with our jaw guide. And then we will slide in one jaw here. Spin this around. Slide in our next one. And slide in the last one. I'll put the hood back on. All right, so I'll lock this up in the vise in our nice brass block. All right, we got our strap wrench. Tighten it down by hand first, and then give a crank on this. All right, that's pretty good. All right, with our little wedge in the collar, we'll just slide this right over the top. I'm gonna put this just below the surface here. Pop out our wedge. That snaps in place. That gives a nice little gap in between the shell here and the collar so those don't scrape together. And I'll just tighten down the little screw here for the collar. All right, I got the chuck sitting on top of the wood stove. Don't worry, the wood stove's not too crazy hot, but if we look right here, now we're about 106 degrees, pointing that right at the Jacob's taper. All right, I got the R8 to Jacob's taper 6 sitting outside here. It's 35 degrees outside, and our Jacob's taper is sitting around 43, 42, 45. All right, so with our chuck warm, that's expanded. This sitting outside, it's contracted. So I'm gonna slide this in and then give this a tap with the dead blow. And that should be really good right there. All right, that's nice and secure. And you can see here our 1/2 inch slides in there no problem. Now what was going on before was that this old Jacob's Taper 6 was a little bit longer than this one, and it went down into the chuck deeper, and it was preventing our spindle screw from going up. So if we look at our diagram, see the screw here? Our Jacob's taper was sticking down into that cavity there, and it wasn't allowing the screw to go all the way up. For some reason, this Jacob's taper was longer than this one. You know, as you can see, this was seated down in there further, almost all the way down to there, where this one sticks out a little bit further. So this is nice to have that remedied, and now I can easily put in a 1/2-inch drill bit into the chuck. And talk about smooth action. Look at that thing roll now. That is awesome. Remember what that looked like inside? That was disgusting in there. So that made me think I should clean out these guys. So maybe this will be in the next video series here. I'll clean out these Jacob's chucks here. Here's the super ball bearing. And here, look at this big guy. Look how dirty that is. This needs a good cleanup. So that's next on the docket. All right, let's test it out. All right, there we go, folks. That was the Albrecht chuck video. That was some time well spent doing some maintenance on such an important tool here in the shop, and it spurred on some new maintenance that I got to do on these chucks. I'll invite you to join me in those videos. And if you want some more resources, you guys know Tubal Cain, Mr. Pete, of course you do. He did a video recently on the Albrecht chuck. He has a whole bunch of them, right? Your YouTube shop teacher. Such a great guy there, Mr. Pete. Lots of knowledge. Go check out his video on the Albrecht chuck. And Tom Lipton also has an old video on the Albrecht chuck. Good information. All right, hope you guys are doing great, and I'll see y'all soon. All right, right on. Thank you.